The issue of whether baptism has replaced circumcision is central to the Reformed Paedobaptist. And the reason is because of the overarching framework of the covenant of grace spanning from the Old Testament to the New Testament being the same in both Old and New Testament. In fact, the word that they specifically use is that it's essentially the same and it shows up in different manifestations, but its essence is the same throughout all time. And so in the Old Testament, for the Reformed Paedobaptist, circumcision was the entrance into the people of God. And now in the New Testament, we have baptism, which is the entrance into the people of God. And so baptism has replaced circumcision. And since circumcision was given to children, so too baptism should be given to children. But what makes this argument so helpful for us to be able to understand and evaluate is that there's a lot in Scripture about circumcision, and there's a lot in Scripture about baptism. And so when we go through this, we can actually evaluate the two and see what are the similarities, what are the dissimilarities, what are the differences. And so when we go through this issue, it's helpful to understand that there are actually many dissimilarities between circumcision and baptism. For example, circumcision was necessarily only for males. It was also performed on the 8th day. But in infant baptism, we only have males and females now. And oftentimes that's argued as far as a broader inclusion. But one of the interesting issues that comes up, and which we talk about in the book, is that the Paedobaptists will often appeal to the principle of continuity. And what I mean by that, and what they would mean by that, is that unless the New Testament specifically changes something, we ought to allow the practice to continue from the Old Testament. And what we realize is, especially with regard to circumcision, is that that principle is non-existent, or at least applied with irregularity. And so in the book, one of the things I try to do is point out all the differences between circumcision and baptism, how baptism has some very, very unique items which are not explained. And it seems to indicate to me, and I think when you examine the scriptural evidence that this is the case, that these are quite different. And furthermore, I think one of the things that really is problematic for the Paedobaptist argument is their inconsistency in how they apply this continuation factor from circumcision to baptism. And so we look a lot into that issue because it's such a key component of this argument.